All right. So, hello, Linda. How are you today?
I'm good, Clarissa. I'm as good as can be with everything that's going on here.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, I'm in Miramichi. You're in St. John, um, and you and I have known each other for a few years. And I reached out to you because I think you have a lot of information and tidbits that you can really help us with. But first, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what your background is.
Sure. Thanks, Clarissa. Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to come on and speak about what I'm doing. So I'm a nurse. I'm currently working in research right now. I've been practicing nursing for 46 years. It's a long
Wow,
time.
long time.
Yeah, and I've worked, yeah, a long time. Um, and I've worked in a variety of roles in nursing. And for the past, I would say, 3 or 4 years, I've started to study coaching.
Okay.
And so I've been pursuing coaching as self-employed nurse, a nurse who coaches. So that's a little bit about me. My clinical background is in neuroscience nursing, which has been most of my career has been caring for patients with any disorders, primarily to the brain. I've done spinal cord injuries, but mostly my work has been with persons with head injury or with neurological disorders of the brain, and helped patients and families. So that's my clinical
Okay.
expertise. Yeah.
So that transition from being a nurse and working the floors and
Yeah.
in kind of different roles to now
Right.
being a coach, but
Right.
you're not just any old coach. You're coaching people in a very you're coaching a very specific group of people. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, what interested me, Clarissa, is it actually was a natural evolution for me as from being a nurse. And what prompted it all is over the years of practice and working in administration and other roles, the environments in healthcare now are becoming more and more complex and harder to work in, I think, for practitioners. And I mean, just what we're facing now in light of the COVID-19, when you're working in healthcare, you really don't know what the next disease is that's coming in through the door. And you may be prepared for it or you may not be prepared for it. And with this event that we're experiencing now, it's not just in healthcare. When I look at the first responders, you look at it's touched everybody, the grocery clerks, like whoever you talk to, everybody's affected by this particular virus in this environment. So what I started to look at was the impact of workplace and what goes on with those complexities of the environment, and started to look at how can I help colleagues. Initially, I was starting to look at nurses and other healthcare professionals and what skills can I offer through coaching to help people cope in those environments to become more resilient. Now, obviously, organizations have different programs. There's employee assistance programs. There's different programming for people to access. However, what I find sometimes is that some of the healthcare professionals would rather reach outside of those formalized systems. It's another system to help people cope in that. So that's what drew me into coaching and moving, into this area. So, like I said, initially I started to work with nurses and other healthcare professionals, but more recently I'm seeing there's a need for this kind of support outside of healthcare. Any discipline now, any, teaching, any banking industry, people are doing the best that they can do. But there seems to me, at least that's my thinking, there seems to be a need to help people support them in another way for their work environments or to cope in their work environments.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And how important is it? I mean, and you mentioned, right down to, right now we have students I have one in my house right now who are, online learning.
Yes.
My husband's a prison guard and, he's going through that as a first responder, and
Yep.
as an essential worker. And then, I just think of inside my family of, the roles that my siblings play and things like that, but right down to, the fast food workers and things like that. How
Yeah.
important is it that, that, this, mental health awareness, or, this workplace wellness or coaching?
Mhm.
How important is it that that plays a role in every workplace?
Mhm. Well, Clarissa, obviously I'm a bit biased because this has been my perspective. I think my whole career, but more recently. And as I said, speaking more from the healthcare perspective because that's my experience. But all of the industries that you just named, what I see is that we are in such a busy culture. We do, and then at the end of the day, for most people, at the end of their work day, they go home, they have families and children, pets and elderly parents. So there's often not that time to even transition from whatever time your day ends, shift ends, and then moving into that next phase of your life. So it's about this creating that awareness of how can I find even 10 minutes for myself? How can I do that? To move on. Another thing that I think is important, because you're alluding to it here, some people simply do not have support systems in place. When I did my doctoral dissertation, some of the participants that were in my research study, and that was in neurotrauma. That's where and some of these nurses, they did not discuss anything when they went home at the end of the day with their families, and a lot of it was family members, if they were married or had partners or whatever. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. So whatever had been going on in that person's day, and this is again, and it's not just my perspective, I mean, there's research to support this, is that witnessing of suffering and pain, it comes into our bodies at a cellular level. And sometimes it does get manifested in physical illnesses or emotional illnesses. So what I started to think about, what ways can people be supported so that they can start to develop their own ways of resilience so that they can cope in those environments and to be able then to transition, because we all have a life outside of our work environments.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately for some, they don't have the support systems. Some people don't even have a cat or a dog to go home to talk to. It's like they simply don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's difficult. And I want to be clear that with all confidentiality and privacy and all that, but it's difficult, I think, for most people not to have the ability to just shut down and to go home. So I think there's a way that coaching can offer people support in the day-to-day work environment, wherever that work environment is.
Right. So let's do a little flip there, and let's talk about, so you and I met through the Oasis program. You were working on, starting your coaching business, and you came into the Oasis program, and you were arm in arm with other businesses. And you used to say to me, I'm different here because, maybe somebody had, a bakery, or somebody had a bricks and mortar store that they opened every day. And you were just starting on this journey of, your coaching business. But you got really familiar with other small business owners and the challenges that they had. So, and that's what Oasis is here for, is to support the small businesses. So, let's chat a little bit about those small businesses that are right now, who maybe don't have a workplace wellness program in place, and they're home now. Their stores have been closed up. They don't know where their next client is coming from. Do you have any tips or tricks or resources for them as they're watching today, or as they go into their next week, month?
Whatever. So, Clarissa, now for some people, they may not be aware or not, but there is all kinds of resources that are online now. And if people want to reach out to me by email, I can certainly offer that. And it depends on the person. Like we hear a lot about, develop a meditation program, do yoga, do the. It's not for everybody, especially in light of what's going on now, what you're saying, but there are, more and more resources for people to be able to either read and reflect, or to create, like, how do you reach out to a community? Well, the first thing is that I have to do it. I have to take that step, right, to be able to do it. But I think more than ever in this time now, and this is the hard piece, is that for people who are not used to this, you know, it's going to take courage to take that first step to reach out. So the first thing I would say is to say, you know, if you're feeling at a loss, you know, or don't know where to go, is who can you reach out to, even outside of your own circle? You know, like, it could be a stranger, you know, but where are the resources? And especially now, so many people have lost their jobs. They don't have money to pay for services. So what is out there that are credible, good resources? And it is about the mindset. You know, here I go back now to the brain, but you know, it's about how can I develop that awareness, and what do I need? Only you know what you need, but it's taking that first step and having the courage to do it. So I think it really does start with the individual, and how, you know, what is it that I need? And I think I do think after, when all this is over, which is going to take a while, but I think the post-traumatic piece to this, I think, is going to be astronomical, because the impact on people's lives, we're not even going to be able to know until, you know, quite a while down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are the advantages of, you know, I mean, I know there's a lot of, you know, coaching and counseling services out there. What do you feel as a nurse, a nurse of 46 years, what do you feel are the advantages that you have, you know, being a nurse and offering this coaching service, you know, to first responders, or, you know, to anybody? What's the advantages that you feel that you bring to, you know, a scenario like this?
Well, the first and foremost is, as a nurse, it's very important for me as a nurse, and especially after so many years of experience, and that is that I draw on my nursing knowledge, abilities, and skills, right? That's my first basis. And the coaching and the development of those skills have added to that. You know, when I receive, you know, I studied coaching as certifications, but as a nurse, the skills, the development, to be able to do the assessment part of it. The other thing is that's key here, Clarissa, you just touched on it, is coaching is very different than counseling or therapy, mentoring, or being a consultant. You know, all of those are professions in and of themselves, and they offer different things. But for coaching, it's looking at, what does the person bring? How do they identify what's going on? And as a nurse, we do develop relationships with our patients, clients, and families to work from, you know, the physical perspective, the emotional perspective, the spiritual, you know, and social perspective. So those skills are there, and they're grounded in our nursing standards of practice and developing the relationships. So as a nurse, and as anybody who's a nurse that brings coaching, if they're still using, now some nurses choose to leave the profession and to move into coaching as a profession. But I do see it a big advantage of drawing on the nursing knowledge and skills and abilities, you know, and having the coaching to work with all of it, the whole package. Yeah.
Okay. And to that point, you know, if I were to reach out to you, or let's say a small business owner, XYZ company, were to reach out with you, what can they expect when you say that, you know, coaching, mentoring, counseling, all that's different? So what can they expect in a coaching session with you? Like, can you walk us through a little bit about what to expect?
Yeah. So the first thing, if somebody contacted me and, you know, they wanted to hear more about, you know, what the services are, and that, obviously, you know, arrange a mutual time and that. And the explanation is, well, what is the issue? What's the core issue, you know, that they're looking to, you know, to work on? And then the next thing is you start with an assessment. Same as that when you go to, you know, your doctor, naturopath, or whoever, You know, nurses, part of our, you know, when we go in and take over a shift, you know, you go in for your shift, you start off, that's the first thing you do is you do your patient assessment. So it's the very same. It's like, so we go through the assessment, depending on what what the situation is. It could be physical. Maybe somebody has some physical illnesses. So part of it is, you know, we don't do a whole head to toe physical assessment, but, you know, maybe if somebody's under a lot of stress at work, for example, I'd be definitely interested in doing, you know, their blood pressure, their heart rate, assessing that physical response and, you know, what's causing it, then moving into, you know, the other areas. So it's that data collection, what's happening here. And then as we move through that is what's going to help. How am I going to offer? So you work with the client to develop those goals together. What's the plan we'll put in place? And then how are we going to evaluate that? So that's very much based on the nursing framework, the nursing process framework. The difference is that the interventions and the goals, you know, would bring in the coaching techniques and the strategies from the coaching perspective. So that's, you know, a very quick overview. The other thing, one of the main differences in coaching is that coaching is centered in the present, like what is happening now and how can we move forward. So it's more future oriented. Whereas with counseling or therapy, for example, is looking at, you know, what are the issues in the past and how have they evolved and what has, you know, presented here. But coaching is, let's look at what's going on now. And obviously you're going to have to, you know, to probe into the background of some of this, but then it's like, okay, how are we going to move forward? So that's the intent, is to start where a person is and how can we move forward in a in a structured goal-centered way.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I'm glad you made that distinction between, you know, the you know, what is happening now and then moving into the future, whereas, you know, what happened, you know, this many years ago to kind of bring you to here. So you know, it's a lot of great points because of the situation that we're in. So, you know, anybody out there who's watching this, you said kind of the first step is to have some courage and to, you know, to raise your hand and say, hey, like I might need to talk to somebody here and might need, you know, some help. Do you have any other, you know, for those people who don't have that courage yet, they're sitting and they're like, I don't have the courage yet to say that I need the help. You know, what are a few things that all of us, you know, small business owners, first responders, you know, mothers who are home with their children right now, pet owners who are, you know, trying to get through Zoom meetings with their dogs howling in the background. What are a few things that tips or tricks that you can tell us that we can do instantly to kind of, you know, just kind of get rid of that, you know, stress before it hits the roof?
Yeah, this is going to sound really off the wall, Clarissa, but there's one question that a person can ask themselves, you know, because when we all know when we're just on the edge, you know, we've all had this edge, you know, it's like, and is to breathe. It is, and this stance, but this is what, you know, is to take those deep breaths. And the question would be, what do I need right now? Right now, what is it that I need? And it's to listen. Like maybe it's to go get a drink of water, maybe it's to get up and stretch for a few minutes, maybe it's, you know, and we don't trust ourselves enough to say, what is it that I need right now, you know? And that's, I would say, but to take a few breaths, because most days we're all adapting now to having meetings by Zoom and all that. And you know, I know for myself is, you know, like breathe, like take a couple of breaths and then say, you know, what do I need right now? And then see what comes, you know, to you to answer that. And, you know, some people say, well, this is absolutely, you know, off the wall, but only you know what you need. You know, only you know what you need. The thing though I will stress is to reach out and to, even if it's to a stranger, you know, like I said, you know, reach out, because I am absolutely amazed at the resources from people who have stepped up to the plate to offer free resources to people to help them cope with the anxiety. You know, I can't imagine, Clarissa, I'm very fortunate, you know, I'm working, but people who have lost their business, I just can't imagine that, you know, especially with people with families and, you know, not knowing where, you know, the paycheck is coming. I know the government is trying to help and all that, but, you know, for people in those situations, it's got to be rough. It's got to be rough.
Yeah. And if things were rocky before COVID-19, and then it just gets layered and layered and layered. So,
exactly.
and I wrote that down, something so simple as asking that one simple question that, you know, it seems like, why didn't I think of that? But I actually, that's what I was doing as I'm writing that down, because, you know, it is quite it's an easy question, one we don't think about often.
We don't. And when I'm working with clients and, you know, we're doing some work and, you know, and I'll say, well, what else? And they'll say, no, there's nothing else. And I'll say, yes, you know, what else? I don't know. Yes, you do know. You do know, Clarissa, you know, but it's taking the time to just be for even 10 seconds. So that's the question. What do I need right now? And then see what comes. See what comes, you know, to you. And if nothing comes, then you don't need anything. It's like, okay, so, you know, but you've stopped, right? You've stopped. It's all about rewiring our brain. And that's all research that, you know, everything now dealing with stress and all the evidence, that's what it's telling us is to, you know, how can we form these new thought patterns, right? To be able to create the actions that we need to move forward. So it's fascinating, and it takes work. It's not like it's going to all happen, you know, in a split second, but it does work. It does work.
Well, that's amazing advice and a great place to leave it, you know, for people right now. Linda, how can people reach out to you?
So probably the best way right now, Clarissa, is my email, right? So I'll just say it out. It's Linda Yetman, Linda, Yetman, Yetman, @Rogers.com.
Okay.
And even if it's to ask for, like, you know, you were talking about these resources. What are these resources? And, you know, for sure to do that. But email is the best way. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate your time. Good luck and stay healthy.
Thank you so much, Clarissa. And thank you for that mentorship program, which